Good morning, Jan.
Oh, good morning.
How have things been going?
Huh. Good, good. But I, I bit myself into this breakpoint thing.
Oh,
Remember
yeah,
last
yeah.
session we talked about stepping through an dependency that was linked with npm link,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't work on my side. So I wanted it to work. And the result is that it almost worked.
Oh.
That it almost works now. Almost, but that's what I said yesterday evening. That's what I said the day before. Um, no, but I think I'm almost there. After a lot of testing, I started with just a JavaScript main and a JavaScript dependency,
Mm-hmm.
and there it's very easy. It works because you just have the JavaScript files. You don't have type files. You don't
Right.
have bundling. Then I converted both to TypeScript.
Mm-hmm.
It gets a little bit difficult because you have the source and you have the JS files. That one I got working.
Oh, okay.
And now I applied Webpack to the dependency side.
Mm-hmm.
And there I run into troubles. But 10 minutes ago, I got it working by manually changing a little bit of source map files.
Okay.
The problem is that Webpack, in a source map file, there is the path of where you can find the source file itself.
Mm-hmm.
And normally it's a relative path towards that source file. And Webpack, it adds Webpack // and then
Okay.
a piece of normal path.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure what that Webpack thing is doing. If I move that and I just put in the normal path, then it works.
Okay.
Apparently that Webpack prefix is referring to the source code, which is included into the source map file.
Okay.
But yeah, so if I change that manually, it works. Now it's just looking through the configuration for Webpack,
Mm-hmm.
and I will find a parameter to change that.
Right. Okay. That. Yeah. Yeah. I think you are getting close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So.
another 10 minutes, which will last 2 days. No, I I spent all the time that I had next to my normal work, all the free time, on doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But that means I didn't progress on the implementation for the database.
Well,
But
that's quite all right.
no,
I did make some progress there. So.
yeah, I saw it. I saw it. I ran quickly through it
Uh-huh.
because yesterday I thought, oh, 5 minutes and the breakpoint problem is solved. And then I
Mm-hmm.
go look to Michael's thing. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been completely focused on the server side, and
mm,
so yeah, thinking about Webpack. Yeah, that would have a different set of constraints. Um, and so uh, right now the starters and all the instructions and everything are still with Webpack 4. Um, have you um, have you tried out Webpack 5?
the
See if
one I
there's any
have
difference.
here, the one I was doing here was the latest. Wait, let me see in Packagejson, Webpack 5.65.
Okay, good, good.
So that's what I'm trying inside this test application.
Mm-hmm.
And once the test application is completely working, then I can see what is different in the shared list and
Mm-hmm.
in Jinaga itself.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I would love to take what you learned from that and basically redo the starter kits. Because I keep getting emails from Snick, which I've got configured to do the vulnerability testing on all the Jinaga stuff, and it's recommending updates to packages, but then when it tries to open a pull request for those updates, the pull requests fail because they test the build against Webpack 4, but I'm also running those builds with Node 12, 14, and 16, and they work for 12 and 14, but then with 16 they don't work, and they're looking at Webpack 4. So it's like, okay, I need to get up to Webpack 5 so that I could update all of the libraries and work with the latest version of Node.
No, I still had the Node version that I originally installed on this virtual machine, which is 14.16.
Oh, okay.
14, but then NPM I upgraded to 7 because of the
interesting.
lock,
Okay.
the package.lock, which is version 1 to version 2 now.
Yeah.
And for the rest, no, VS Code is the latest one. TypeScript compiler is the latest one, and the TS loader is also the latest one.
Excellent.
So,
yeah, that'll help.
I already started documenting it. Once I have the sample completely finished, I will upload it to GitHub.
Okay,
There's the different stages I had it in a source repository.
Yeah, that'd be really cool to have that for the January conference in Austin. So I'm going to be going to that conference. The actual name of the conference. That now they've got an Austin event. So I used to go to Wisconsin all the time to go to the conference, but yeah, now it's somewhat local.
Now they will go back live, I think, not online anymore.
Right. Yes. Yeah. They are running 2 events in parallel rather than trying to make the live event accessible to people who are offline. They're actually just running an offline event, an online event and a live event at the same time. So it'll be an interesting experiment.
Yeah. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope anyway. that they will also record the sessions so that we could share it afterward. But yeah,
that would be nice. Okay, because I saw your Australian session was also recorded.
Yes.
I don't have access yet. I saw you just log into the website and then they tell you, you have to wait 2 months or so. I say, okay, wait 2 months and I will have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you get a subscription now, you got it available immediately.
Yeah, but in the end you have so many subscriptions.
Yeah.
So many subscriptions and no money anymore. I try to balance the two.
Yeah, but that one was really fun. Yeah, I basically changed the kind of the structure of the story that I tell around historical modeling, and kind of built it back again from the beginning and got to a place where it's got all the practical advice that you've seen before about database design and API design and message design. But yeah, just kind of built up to that from a different foundation. So yeah, in the past I've done separate talks on how not to destroy data for database design, 2 generals for API design, and it's like this one tells that whole story and ties it all together. But it stops before talking about immutable runtimes. So yeah, I'm still with this kind of talk. I'm still focused on, and you can do this today with the tools that you know. Yeah, we're really looking forward to doing more of the immutable runtime talks, where it's like, all right, and now here's a tool that you can start using. Here's Jinaga. So that's going to be a good world.
Yeah, because it's still it's the accessibility of the tools today, which is, if I now going back for a while to this JavaScript, okay, I'm getting deeper and deeper into it, and I start seeing how it goes. But then if you search for solutions on the internet and you see the amount of people struggling with it,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And then you say, okay, .NET is, we are not always happy about Microsoft, but it's a stable situation. It works 99% of the time,
Yeah.
which is not the case with the JavaScript environment.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to being able to live in both of those worlds and to compare. See, and really compare as people come into the Janaga space. What are they having trouble with, and what are they finding to be easy. And yeah, making sure that all of the Webpack stuff and if if you find React to be unfamiliar, okay, let's get that out of the way. Are you used to Xamarin? Are you used to Razor? Let's do something that you're used to and see what value you can get out of it.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing about all the platforms is that we can just take the good things from every platform, the good ideas, and combine them. But
Yeah.
Still some work to do.
Yes, indeed. Well, let me go ahead and get the share going, and let's talk about. Here we are. Let's. Oh goodness, yeah. Here's me looking at Webpack stuff, and source maps and all.
Yeah.
All right. So to kind of get this process started, Jinaga.JS. So back to the old code base. Let me go ahead and clear everything out there so we can start fresh. I created this folder, integration test, and it's got two subfolders, Jinaga test and Postgres, and a Docker compose, and a little script that makes everything go. So the idea is that I'm building up a Docker container that just runs Postgres and the Janaga schema, and then a different Docker container that runs the tests. And so I'm using Docker Compose in order to have the tests connect to the database, run everything, and then shut down. So doing a couple of Docker builds. The first one builds Jinaga Postgres Fact Key Store, and this is the same image that is currently out on Docker Hub that somebody can just start this image, start a container based on this image, and then they've got a Jinaga database. So it's going to build that out of the Postgres folder.
Yeah.
And then here it's going to copy the output of the build, so index.js and index.js.map. It's going to copy those into the Jinaga test folder. So they end up right there. That should be... Yeah, I'm wondering why that's... Oh, that's Jinaga test. Okay, Jinaga.js, right. Yeah, the map file should be included in there as well. But and then it does that Docker build, and then it does a Docker compose. So it brings up the images described in this compose file. So it's very simple. You run two services: Jinaga test based on the image Jinaga test, and the database based on Jinaga Postgres Fact Key Store. Set some environment variables and open a port. So very simple. And then because of Docker Compose, this container is able to resolve that name. So DB actually it allows it to get a connection to 5432 on that image. And so I can do this. So create a Jinaga server. Here's the username, password, and database that were all configured inside of those environment variables over here. That password never actually used by the application, which is good. And then we can start running tests. So before everything, it creates a Jinaga server, and after everything, it closes it. So actually, this is a new feature that I just added for the purpose of testing, is this ability to just shut down all your connections. I didn't have that in the Jinaga server that's currently deployed because it's intended to be started and just keep on running forever. But yeah, that's going to be a new capability. So what we're doing.
Yes, and how did you shut down a Jinaga server normally? The connections once nobody's connecting to it, the connection pool will close in the end.
Yeah. So this is yeah. Let's dive into the close here. So if we go into source, and we've got Postgres. Here's our Postgres Store. So there's the a bunch of utility functions. Here's the actual Postgres Store. So now, yeah, so now it implements close, and so it's closing the. Well, if we go, connection factory is actually a little utility class here, but yeah, this ends the Postgres pool. So yeah, previously there was no code that actually called Postgres pool end. So the pool would start up. It would have a bunch of clients that it allocated as they were needed, but it never deallocated those clients. So whenever the process shut down, they would just it would throw away that memory, but yeah, it wasn't doing anything to shut down the pooled connections to the database.
It was not a clean shutdown.
Right.
Well, now you can just start shutdown while testing.
Yep, exactly. Okay. So then there's a lot of plumbing to get that close method all the way up here so that you can call it from your test. So all that plumbing is in there now. You know, everything that has a it's basically when you start Jinaga, this whole Jinaga server create builds this entire graph of classes that all work together. Yeah, it's kind of like the inversion of control without the IOC container. It's just like, you know, hey, I see that you've got Postgres configured here, so let me give you one of those, and then I'm going to plug it in here, and it builds that entire graph. So yeah, calls close on the right thing to kind of propagate through that graph and shut everything down. So far we have a test that you can say j.fact, and it'll give you back that fact, presumably after persisting it, but there's nothing about this test that's actually testing that it was persisted. And then the next one, save a successor. So now we've got the fact, and then we've got something that refers back to it. So far these are just kind of exercising code. They're not truly validating the results of that code. In order to validate the results, they would then have to be able to run a query based on the facts that they just persisted. And that'll pretty much be an end-to-end test of the whole thing. So I'm kind of walking up to that.
Or just using the load method.
Yeah. Oops. So let's go into.
The storage.
Yeah. So at this level, I'm only exposing J. So yeah, we just have this thing. There we go. So, so yeah, I've got
Watch
fact
query
query
and
watch.
fact.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So load is called during the query or the watch. So yeah, eventually the test will run j.query. Then that's going to actually execute the query. So it's going to turn your specification function into some SQL, execute that SQL, and then it's going to call load in order to get all of the fields, and the predecessor's going to realize the facts that it just found.
Yeah.
And hydrate them from the tree. So yeah, that's doing a lot of work. But yeah, so in order to kind of walk up to that, I got it exercising just enough to save a fact, and so that tested inserts into the fact type and fact tables. So then when I added the test for a successor, in order to accomplish that, it needs to insert into the role table and the edge table, and the ancestor as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so far I am working on the role insert, and learned a lot of things along the way. So actually, this document is a little bit different than the last time we looked at it. So let's go ahead and kick this thing off and see if this works. So I'm going to do a something to kind of help me out is inside of Packagejson. I did not for that one. Oh, this is the Packagejson for the actual test. It just has the test script. So it runs jest. Packagejson for the main project now has integration. So it runs the build script, which is just the
Webpack.
the Webpack. So yeah, this is still using Webpack for both client and server side. So that's one thing that I do want to change about the core project.
For the server side, we don't really need Webpack.
Right.
We can just use TSC to compile it.
Yep. That is what I want to eventually change it into. One nice thing about having it as Webpack is that it also bundles it. So when I get to here, I just need to copy this one file and its source map. But yeah, it's not the ideal way to do it.
What is the disadvantage of using Webpack there? Because indeed it bundles. There is this tree shaking thing, so it's optimized.
Yeah. Yeah. I worked through that question. I think probably about a couple of years ago now is when I worked through that question. I don't remember exactly why I said no. Okay, from now on I'm going to recommend. I think actually it was when we were working on the Jinaga.com documentation that it was much easier to get somebody started with TSC for a Node application. And yeah, the Webpack configuration ends up being kind of complicated. So if I take a look at Webpack config, now I've got two exports. One is the
Web target,
yeah,
and
so
the other
this
one. Oh,
yeah, so that's the client side targeting AMD, and here's the server side. So it's targeting the node module system, Common.js.
yeah.
So so yeah, there's actually that doesn't look too complicated, but well, for this project, for the application example, there was a lot more going on because you had the CSS bundler on the one hand, but then the other hand you didn't have that.
It surely
Yeah.
complicates the workflow and the tool set.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, you get just one bundle.
Yeah. Yeah. So for this, that's kind of here it is. That's kind of handy. But I could make this a directory copy instead of a file copy. That would. But yeah, when it's deployed as a an npm package. So so users probably won't care too much if the server side is not bundled and it's just a bunch of JS files. Okay, so yeah, so integration runs npm build, and then it changes to the integration test and runs the script.
Yeah.
So if I npm run integration, integrate. Let's see. Oh, I'm inside of the integration test. Yeah, because I was running it manually for a little bit while I was getting it all set up. But now npm run integration, so it does the build. That's gonna webpack everything, and that succeeds. And then oh no, there was something red, but still everything passed. Interesting. And now it's trying to shut things down. Oh, and here it's saying that there's some processes that are out there still running. So it looks like it didn't run the most recent. Yeah, this red was probably, it wasn't able to build. Yeah, it wasn't able to build the new Docker images. So it's still running an older set of Docker images. Okay. So, demo fail, but the once I get those things working again on this machine, which is probably just, I wonder if Docker Desktop is just shut down. No, it looks like it's running. Okay, it says it wants to update, but okay. But yeah, once I get those done, looks like it's just not pulling the base images for some reason. But the base images should already have been pulled. Yeah, then you'll see that it's starting up the database, and it's starting up Jinaga test, and you can see them interleaved because it's starting them in parallel. And then we're running the tests. At the time this image was created, there was only the one test, so you see the one test passing. Yeah. And then it shuts things down as soon as Janaga test terminates. So then you use the exit code from Janaga test, and that becomes the exit code for Docker Compose. So yeah, now I just need to check that X code and return it from this bash script so that I could actually use that as an integration test during CI. And then this here tells it to not try to reuse the volumes. So part of the test is that inside of the Postgres folder, we've got the setup SQL. So I want it to run this code just in case I've changed it, because that was kind of the purpose of the test, is to get this right. And so if it loaded an existing volume, it'd say, oh, it's already initialized. I don't run the initialization script. So that, coupled with docker compose down -v, deletes all the volumes. So it's like, okay, let's clean up everything so that we can start fresh.
The real best.
Yep. Yes, indeed. So, a couple of things that I learned from doing this. So first of all, here I changed a few of the names. The last time we looked at the document, this was just defining type ID, predecessor type ID, and I was like, well, I didn't call this type, so this isn't the type table. I didn't want to use such a generic word as type. So it's like fact type. So make those consistent.
Yeah.
But something else that I learned is this one right here, predecessor fact type ID. I don't really have enough information to do that one. And so the idea is that when a fact declares a field that is pointing to another type of fact, then that's a predecessor. It could be a single, or it could be an array. And in .NET, we've got reflection, and so we can actually take a look at that and see what that type is. In JavaScript, we don't have that information. All we have is that for this particular instance of a fact, that field contains an object that is of a particular type. But that's no guarantee that some other instance of the fact will use that same field to refer to a different type. And that's actually perfectly valid. I don't use that capability too often, but that would basically be how you do a polymorphic type of a graph. So you've got facts that could be of different types, but they all appear within the same role. So yeah, presumably you would have some kind of a base class declaration, so you could detect those at runtime and have different behaviors. But as far as the graph is concerned, it's just going from one instance to another based on the role, and the graph already encodes what type it's looking for as it does that kind of query. So yeah, as it turns out, that information not easy to get to in JavaScript. Well, actually, not possible to get to in JavaScript, and not useful.
Don't really need it.
Yeah. So so you'll see that my role just has the defining fact type ID. Okay, that was on a different machine. I haven't checked that in yet. But yeah, predecessor fact type ID. I am dropping.
Simplifies.
Yep. So the other thing that I learned, let's see. Yeah, I think Yeah, all of that is still the same as what we talked about before. But the other thing of consequence was the concurrency. So let's see if I have that code in here. So if I go to my Postgres store, and I'm going to store fact types. Yeah, so this has the difference in it. So let's kind of walk through this code real quick. Okay, so the first thing that it's going to do is see if the fact types that it has are already in the database. So in fact, I'm going to want to do filter distinct, so that I get just the distinct types. So that's the arrays of string. So then it's going to look up the fact type IDs for all of those different names. So this is a nice little feature in Postgres. It's a little bit limited, but it works in this case, where you're basically passing an array. Yeah. And so that
it's a placeholder, or
yeah. So usually the placeholder is for atomic values, but yeah, in Postgres you can also pass arrays. So that's an array, and we're passing an array that contains just that thing, so that the $1 element of that array is an array. So that's the reason for the extra nesting there. But yeah, name equal any element of this array. That's not standard SQL, but it's something that Postgres does. And so yeah, that way we can just get the fact type IDs that are already in the database, where the name matches something in there.
Yeah.
And then we're going to take those rows, which are just the fact type ID and the name, so these two things that I selected out there, and reduce them into a map of string to number. So given a type name, I can look up the ID for it. So add fact type is just a function that adds that element to the map, just to make things nice and simple. So now I've got my map of string to number, and then I can filter the types to get the ones that are not in that fact type map. And so these are the ones that have not been saved to the database yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
if they are none, you just return from the function, and otherwise you insert them.
Right. Yep. So it's basically the two pass selector insert that we were talking about here. So selector insert fact type, and doing it in these two passes means that most of the time you're going to terminate here, because most of the time it's just new instances of the same old fact types. But then every once in a while you fall through. And so this is where I was thinking about a different concurrency pattern, and since changed my mind here. So so what I was originally thinking is that this would be OnConflict do nothing. And the problem is that I need to get the fact type ID of the thing that I just inserted, and OnConflict do nothing will literally do nothing. It won't return that fact type ID for you.
Yeah.
And you have people in the issues of Postgres saying, hey, I need that ID that was just matched, that just caused the conflict. Can you just return that ID for me? And and the answers are it definitely shows the different mindset of somebody building a tool and somebody trying to use it. Yeah, so the answers are very implementation specific. It's like, well, it did nothing. It didn't it didn't select that thing, so it's not going to be able to return it. And it's like, but yeah, the intent here is that I want to ensure that there is a row that has this particular set of values, and whether you inserted it or not, I want the ID of that row. So it's just that difference of expression of intent versus expression of implementation.
Mm-hmm.
So so yeah, while looking through all of the different solutions to this problem, they got just really complicated. Some people were talking about OnConflict update, I think is the syntax for it. The syntax might be a little bit different, but yeah, basically it turns this insert into an update if it finds an existing row, and then it's going to be able to return that fact type ID because it actually updated something. But the problem is that even in a database that does allow updates, that is going to cause some extra noise to be added to the transaction log that you don't need. But
we don't want to update. We
Yeah.
want to insert.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, especially true in this database, I don't allow updates. So if I were to do that, then it would throw an exception. So so what I was originally going for was OnConflict do nothing, and we're not going to return the type ID, but then later just redo this select in order to get those IDs after they were inserted. And so yeah, I actually have that code in the history, and then I took it out and kind of thought through all of the different concurrency scenarios that that Postgres would have to be solving for, and realized, you know what, this is actually the correct way to go. So yeah, the problem is, again, intent versus implementation. The intent of a transaction is that you should be able to run these transactions in parallel or in sequence and get the same result. Yeah, that's really what you mean when you say begin transaction. Is I don't want to care about the details. I want you to take care of it for me. And so within a transaction, it's only consistent for a select that returns nothing, followed by an insert that tries to insert that thing, shouldn't have a uniqueness constraint violation.
Yeah.
But then flip to the implementation side, how would you actually make that work? You could make that work, or you could try to make that work with row locks. So that's the usual way of within a transaction trying to prevent things from happening that shouldn't happen. So if this were an update, so you did the usual pattern of I'm going to select, get the data into memory, I'm going to change it, and then turn that into an update. Now you've selected a row, you have a read lock on the row, and then when you do the update, it tries to escalate that to a write lock, which could lead to deadlocks, but in the ideal case where it doesn't, that basically protects against others who are or trying to read or write, that they will either see the version before or the version after, but not both. So you get that isolation within your transactions. But the problem here is that the row that we're trying to insert was specifically not returned from the select, so there's nothing to lock. So so the next thing that you could think of to do that would be some kind of a predicate lock, where I'm going to put a lock on this index with these particular values, even though I know that they don't match a row right now. So if somebody else tries to do a select with those particular values, I want to make sure that they get a consistent result. And then I'm going to do an insert with those values, and that's going to change that predicate, or that, I mean, for that, it's going to change the results for that particular predicate, and then I want to keep those consistent. I don't know of any databases that actually do that. That's kind of out there. So that preventative solution, I'm pretty sure Postgres doesn't do. What I have seen that it does is detection after the fact. So, and it does that in two different ways. One way is when it actually performs the insert. At that point, it's going to update that index right there within the transaction, and if it's and so by default, if you don't have any OnConflict clause, then if it finds that it's actually violating the uniqueness constraint at that point, it's going to just throw. And so this is inside of a transaction, and I've configured it to roll back whenever something throws. So it's going to roll back that entire transaction. And so that's preventative on the well, not really preventative. It's detecting it as soon as it can on the index, and then just rolling back. But the second way that it could do that, so the second way that it could do that is allow the insert to take place, get the insert into the transaction log, and then when you commit the transaction, at that point, it's replaying this transaction log to make sure that it's serializable with other transactions, and the commit will fail if you have a uniqueness constraint violation. And I think the way that you choose between those two is with the OnConflict. There's another one that rather than do nothing or update, there's another one that I can't remember what it is, that tells it to abort this particular insert but allow the rest of the transaction to continue.
Then you don't really have a transaction anymore.
Yeah. Actually, now that I've said that, how is that different from do nothing? But I think it's that it'll throw an exception from the insert, and now your code gets to make a different decision, try something else, and it doesn't fail the entire transaction just because one command failed. So I think that's what it is. So your code can take on more of the negotiation of making the transaction work. Whereas with this, by default, it's like, all right, you're going to abort the whole transaction when you throw. So actually, by the time it gets to my code here, and the code aborts the transaction, Postgres is probably saying, yeah, I already know, transaction's already aborted. But so the reason that I settled on this is that first of all, it makes it much more direct to get that ID back. But then I knew that in order to keep trying to somehow rescue this transaction was making the code more complicated, and that's part of the reason I was seeing all of these answers are just really complicated code, in order to avoid a particular edge case. So you can't ignore edge cases. Edge cases will happen, but here we're taking kind of the easy way out of the edge case and letting the database do of the various things that it could do, what's actually just the easiest one, and just roll back the entire transaction. And that way, the next time through, then it should find that fact up here, and it'll never make it to the insert.
Yeah.
So, in order to make sure that I could do that, I added one more bit of code. So, like up here, we are using connection factory with transaction. So that's the code up here that starts a transaction, calls commit or rollback. But that's using with in order to grab something out of the connection pool. And so that used to be a nice, simple little bit of code. Now it's got an exponential backoff.
I'm out. Okay.
Yep. So, so yeah, we started attempt 0. We can work our way all the way up through this this pause array. So the first one isn't going to pause; it's going to go straight in. In fact, the pause code is at the end. So even if that was non-zero, it wouldn't actually do anything. But then if that fails, if there's any kind of exception, then it's going to move on to attempt number 1. And that also pauses for 0 time, so it does no delay. And so my thinking there is that if you run into this deadlock situation, by the time you know about it, it's already resolved. So you just go in and you try again. So no reason to give anybody any extra delay. And when you can, we can go ahead and just retry and things will work. But then from that point, starts increasing the delay. 1 second, 5 seconds, 15, and 30. And then after that, you just give up altogether. Throw the exception, and then at least the client knows that, okay, my persist operation did not succeed. So so that makes it oops, that's the wrong key. There we go. Toggling back and forth between Windows and Mac. So that at least makes this kind of a mechanism the simplest and safest way to go. It also has one other nice side effect, and that is, so we go back to the Docker Compose. That is that here I don't have any declaration of dependency. I started out with a depends upon statement right up here in Janaga test. So Docker Compose would wait until the database was running and listening at port 5432 before starting Jinaga test. So and it happened that the Postgres container, that base image, is set to run all of your startup scripts before it starts listening at that port. So so I had some confidence that if I documented this as depends upon the database, then the database would be up and running before it started running the test. But that's the wrong solution to that problem. The better solution is that if the database is not available, then you just wait a little bit, retry. So that satisfies not just the startup, but also the occasional outage. So you're just restarting the database for whatever reason. let the client just say, oh, wait a minute. Okay, it's back. Let's keep going. So that's possible because of that guy.
Yeah. But actually, he's really running in a loop here.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying, while it's smaller than post.length. So he keeps.
Yeah, so it's going to increment on every exception. If an exception is not thrown, then it's going to return.
Yeah. Post.length. So try that catch. And you're not. Oh, yeah. What is the the next line here? If
yeah.
pause. Okay, here he waits. Yeah, if then all right. It just there is a delay built in, so
Yeah.
it's not. I thought he was just circling all the time.
Ah, right. Yeah. Yeah. It only does that on the so the first and second are with no delay. So it's going to try the first one. That fails. It'll immediately try the second one. That fails. Then it'll wait for a second.
Okay. No, that's a nice solution.
Yep. Yep. That and what I really like is that I was able to take that solution and build it down into Jinaga. So now you don't have to think about those policies while you're building your application. Yeah, kind of getting back to that whole idea of thinking as an application builder versus thinking as a tool builder. I want you to just be able to express your intent as an application developer, and not have to always think about the edge case. Let that be the tool builder's problem. So yeah, when you come in here and you express this as your intent, then it's like I don't care if you actually did the insert or not. Just give me back the ID. So the equivalent in Janaga, await j.fact. I don't care if the database wasn't available. Don't throw an exception from that. Do the right thing, and only resolve that promise once the fact is saved.
And as long as that fact is not saved, the client will not get a confirmation, and so the fact will stay in the queue on the client side.
Yeah, and so on the client side, await j.fact, that is that's supposed to resolve as soon as it's persisted at the client. So yeah, it resolves. It's in the queue. It's in the client's local storage. So when they restart the application, their data is still there. And then you have a promise that as long as there's a background thread that's able to keep running, eventually it'll make a connection and it'll send it to the server.
Because if I implement the same thing on the client side, there it's not in a queue, so I will have to give an error message to the user.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the action that he undertook will fail, and he will have to restart again.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I just don't want to treat our users like HTTP client. I don't want to. Okay, I did a thing. Oh, something failed. Well, if I were to retry, it would work because it's just based on an ephemeral connection. It'll eventually work. treat them a little bit better than that. They say, all right, I got your stuff. I'm going to do whatever it takes in order to make sure that your intent is realized.
Yeah.
Yep. But not take the promise too far. Yeah. My intent is that this property has this value. I can't guarantee that. What I can guarantee is that your intent is captured. And now if somebody else has a conflicting intent, it's up to you to figure out what actually happened.
We will let you know. We store both, and you can see and decide yourself.
Yep.
All right.
So, yeah. I've got that pattern going on for storing fact types. Storing facts is a very similar type of pattern. So returning the fact ID. Here it can't use the in or the any syntax because that only works for an array of simple types. Here we're trying to match against a hash and a fact type. So I have to bring that in as as values. So that code's a little bit more complicated, but it's essentially the same pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, here the inserts return the fact ID, and if you can't, then let it throw.
Well, that was exactly the magic why I wanted this step through and the breakpoint to be working.
Yeah.
To be sure that I really understood what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and so far I haven't figured out how to do the breakpoint thing while I'm using Docker Compose. I've seen demos that show that it should be possible, but yeah, so far I haven't done that. I've just kind of muddled my way through it.
Yeah. So you want to, because in Docker it's not running in the development environment then.
Right. Yeah, and I didn't dive into the demos that I saw in order to see exactly how it was doing it, but somehow Visual Studio Code is able to see some kind of an agent that's running inside of Docker Compose, and debug through things. So it might be worth setting that up. But at the very least, I'm in a pretty nice tight loop of making a change, testing the change, and once it settles down, then I can actually run this bare metal rather than going into a container, because I know I don't have to keep rebuilding the database all the time. I was like, okay, the database is stable. I'll just go ahead and run that locally instead of in a container, and then I can just step through things like I'm used to.
Yeah.
But that's what I've been working on.
So even if you would run it without Docker container, what would be the disadvantage that you have to delete the database every time?
Yeah. It would just be more of a manual process. Setting this up, I'm able to just, well, in theory, run one command, and it just does everything. Which
here you're sure you restart from scratch every time.
Yeah.
If you delete the volume, yeah.
Yep. And I should also be able to then set up continuous integration to run this script every time in a GitHub action, and then I know that it's running all of my integration tests, not just my unit tests. Anyway, fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, knowing all the insides and outsides of the tools is a challenge on itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only the programming; it's the tools also.
Yes, indeed.
Mm.
Yeah. So one day we'll make the tools easier to use.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that we don't have to get there before adoption really picks up, but maybe that's the case. Yeah, maybe people are really just going to wait till I can just start a thing. I mean, ultimately, I've told you this before. I want this to be as easy as using Microsoft Office. So, yeah, yeah, Access. I remember the days when I could just start up Access and then start putting data in, and I could start working with it before I've even created a form. And then, hey, I want this to be a better experience, so I create a form. I use the master detail template, and it says, okay, join this parent table, that child table, give me the data, and then I can start working with it. Oh, okay, now I really want to capture this. Let me create a report. Oh, here's the template that does a master detail report. There it is. It looks good. All right, print it. All that before you ever got into writing any Visual Basic code inside of Access to make things more more intelligent. And I want to see that kind of incremental refinement of the application with Jinaga. I want somebody to be able to go up online and say, I'm going to start creating some information, just like in a SharePoint list. And you just start capturing stuff. And then, these are all facts. Okay, and then now I've got these other things that are going to be related to them. And so I pick one, I go into a child form, and I start entering stuff there, or I pick it from a list, and it's really just building a graph. And then,
already the advantage we have now with Jinaga is that your modeling is just an interactive stuff. You talk to your customer, you note down your model, and that's a very small step to start with.
Yes.
And once you have that, I think if Jinaga.net and the server are finished, it will never be finished, but it's really working. And then we have a real application which shows people what is possible with it. That it's not just a toy. It's easy to enter, but with a little bit more effort, you can make real production applications.
Yeah.
That will give people incentive to learn more. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Because I will not be able to put the final version or the latest from DBS in a GitHub, but we should be able to put some stripped versions in GitHub and make them public.
Yeah. I think so.
Why not? I just need to make sure that my own version is just a little bit better than the GitHub version.
Right.
and even that I don't know. I always say customers don't come to me because of the software. They come to me because even if they could copy the software, there is so much more.
Right.
Yeah. The response time, the relation, the way you solve the problems, it's a complete package. So I'm not too sure that making the software public available would really be a problem. The only thing, perhaps a competitor who
that's
gets
the thing
too
to look
many
out
ideas. but even then.
Yeah.
But we will see how it goes. But definitely there should be a portion of the final software online, so that would be a nice sample.
Yeah, I think so. I think the service worker domain is a really great example of what Jinaga is built for.
Yeah.
So I could see people, it could kind of a generic service worker domain application out there, and then people would be able to take it and modify it for their particular use case.
Yeah.
And one of the clients that I did a quick review for. This was over 2 weeks. Now a couple of years ago. Oh yeah, about 3 years ago now. So I did a review of their architecture, and it's a service worker application. And they were having exactly the problem with offline data storage. And I was like, yeah, this is what I do. This is what I think about. Yeah, and gave them some things that they could start with right away, and then kind of the bigger picture. That was before the book was published. So it's like, and I'm writing this book. It'll be out soon, but yeah, that'll help you out.
Well, I'm still amazed that there is still not really a good solution to synchronization.
Mm-hmm.
You have multiple frameworks, but either these are things which you cannot really rely on,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
made by Google and free, and you know that one day Google will say, "Oh, we don't like it anymore, finished." Either recently I discovered that the Sync framework from Microsoft, that was that promising thing that never made it to a release.
Yeah.
I think the guy is called Sebastian Pertus. He's a French citizen. He's living not so far from me. I think perhaps 100 or 200 kilometers. I don't know him, but he has a nice website. He's working for Microsoft, and he started developing his own Sync framework. So he made it available also for Android, for iOS.
Awesome.
But I think historical modeling is still the way to go.
But yeah, I do have a kind of a habit of reviewing these things, and it used to be that I was like, oh, did somebody figure it out? Let me see if I can just jump onto their thing. Oh wait, no, there's flaws here. Okay, let me get back to you. And yeah, now it's like, oh, I'm still going to keep doing what I'm doing because I see a vision that maybe other people don't share, even if they solve the sync problem. But yeah, I would and I think the thing that I kind of settled on is Jinaga is not infrastructure. Janaga is built on infrastructure. So this one, here's Postgres or SQLite. I could see Jinaga being built on RabbitMQ, on top of Kafka. So yeah, if he's got some infrastructure that helps with the things that Jinaga needs, I could definitely build Jinaga on top of that, and that would be a great way to work together.
I think it's much more than just syncing, because although he has rebuilt the sync framework in open source, the problem is still that if you want to update a system with a lot of clients, you have to update everybody together.
Yeah.
Now also there, if you have the source code, you might make some tools to make that easier. But already the fact that you...
Uh-oh. Looks like the time just extended.
Discord really doesn't want me to stay.
Yeah, so we are at what?
I'm back.
Yeah.
Can you see me?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to see how much time we've been online, because it used to be 45 minutes.
It's longer now.
Yeah, now it looks like it's an hour and 15.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
No. Anyway, Michael, next Monday you will be there, or you have next Monday? What day is it? It's the 27th.
Yes. Yep. Still planning on our stream for next Monday.
Now, if anything comes in between, don't worry. Just a small message, and then it will be the week after. But
sounds good.
Have a nice Christmas holiday.
You as well.
Yep, and see you next week, Monday then.
Yes, indeed. Right.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.